Hello, my name is Dibib, and today we're going to be doing our fifth lesson in this video series, which is about sets. So in the previous video, we talked about lists, and we briefly introduced the concept of sets. To give a brief recap, lists are where you have ordered lists, whereby the elements can be accessed using the index values. This is not true, however, for sets, whereby it is a list of elements, in the case of a set, but you don't have an order, meaning that you don't have an index value, which means you can't use an index value to get an element from the list, get an element from the set. That is, a set is basically a list, but it is not an ordered list. That's the key distinction we've made in the previous lesson. We're going to be, of course, talking more about sets in this video, but that's the brief, high-level overview. So let's give a bit of information about sets to really get into nitty-gritty details. So a set is a collection which is unordered and unchangeable. What that means is, in a list, we can add and append values, right? And that makes lists very useful. A set, however, is unordered and unchangeable, meaning that once it's set, you can't change it. That's kind of why it's called sets, because it's sort of set in stone. That's the way I like to think about it and remember that data structure. So that means you cannot edit, add, or remove items. Now, we did talk about certainly using some functions that we did use for lists in the case of sets, and we can, but not to add or remove items. There are other functions, methods you can use using the dot method file system, whereby you have, let's say, dot append after, apologies, the name of the list. That is what you do for lists. And for sets, you can do the same thing, but you can't append or remove. You can do other methods. Okay, that's a really important thing to keep in mind. It does not allow duplicate values. So in lists, you can have duplicate values. You can have number 5 10 times. No problem. In sets, you can't. Each value must be unique. And it's written with curly brackets. What that means is with a list, you have square brackets. To define the list, let's say it's my list equals square brackets, then the elements inside. There can be numbers, integers, or strings, whatnot. Okay? Here, you write it with curly brackets outside rather than the square brackets. So example is as follows. My set equals curly brackets, and the elements being hello and world. And note here, like we mentioned a little bit in the previous video, when you output this set, let's say by using a for loop to iterate through the set, iterate through a list, whichever way you want to call it. Usually in programming, we call it iterate through a list. That's just a general speaking term, but you can say iterate through a set too. In this case, that's more precise, actually. Okay, when you're iterating through the set and you're outputting it, it could be in order of hello world. It could be world hello. We don't know because it's an unordered list. So let's go to the properties of sets. It can be any data type or a mix of several. That's a key similarity with lists, unlike arrays, right? Arrays all have to be the same data type, the elements for an array. Lists, it can be any data type or a mix of several data types. Same for sets. It has no index values, like I mentioned earlier, because it's an unordered list. You can use the len function to find the length. Yes, this is important. You can use the len function to find the length of an array or a list. And you can do the same for sets. So that's a very big benefit. It's not all gloom, because some people think that, sets don't have index values, so it means it's hard to find a len for something. No, you can still use the len function. You can loop through the set using a for loop. As I mentioned earlier, you can iterate through using the len function and whatnot. Quick syntax reminder, like I said earlier, use the curly brackets outside to define the set. No. So, pretty self-explanatory. You can't have an index value for a set. That's why in square brackets, if you put 0, it just won't work. It will give an error. Len my set, however, works, because you've said the length of my set is 3 because you have 3 elements. Okay? For the len function, unlike other things in Python with regards to parameters about, properties of lists and sets and whatnot, for example, the for loop, as I mentioned earlier, right? If you have I in range from 1 to 11, it outputs at 10, whatnot. The len function is very simple. It has no quirks whatsoever. If you have 3 elements, your length is 3. If you have 5 elements, your length is 5, so on and so forth. So accessing set items, how do you do this? So no index value, so you can't refer to the element for its index. Rather, you can loop using a for loop or check if the element is in the set. So for looping in a for loop, you just do for x, x being the number counter. In this set, you print the x value, okay? So you loop with a for loop. You're not using any len function or anything, you're just looping through and just saying, in this element in the set, print it, okay? In no particular order, so that for loop could actually print it apple, cherry, banana. It could print banana, cherry, apple. It's actually 6 combinations of the ways you can output it, because 3 factorial, 6 choices. Anyway, on the other hand, for accessing set items using an if element, it's a different story, an in element. So for the in element, all we do is we say print set element in this set. Okay, so we talked about how in sets you can only have unique items, meaning that each item can't be repeated, right? So when it says print banana in the set, it's easy because there's only going to be one banana element in that set. There can't be more than that, or the set wouldn't work. So you can also just do print set element in this set. In being the piece of syntax, so you need to specify that it is in that particular set. Set methods. So what are methods we can use with set? Well, we can add and remove elements to the set, to the list, right? Add and remove elements to the list. Now you're probably thinking, wait, I just told you that, if we go all the way back a couple slides, that, let's just be very, very sure, do you count edit, add, or remove items? That's kind of true and kind of false. Basically what that means is you can't append items. You can't use the list methods to do it. But you can use certain methods to modify a set. Okay, you can add and remove elements to the list. Okay? So what's the context of set now? So that is what we have there. So you can use the add and discard methods. Okay? That's code. So check if an item is present, and if it is, then remove it. So we say, here the answer therefore is, my set 0, 1, 2, 3. I've just put 4 elements in. Numbers int, input a number, so it just inputs the number from the user. It discards that number, and it prints a set. Okay, so if the input number is 5, then nothing's going to happen because 5 isn't in the set, so it's just discarding a number that doesn't exist in the set. If you input 2, then it will remove that particular element from the set. Let's take another example, right? Code defines the minimum and maximum values of a set. So this is how it works. We have a couple values in my set. We have 6 values. So the max and the min. So this is a key programming thing we do in general. It's that we set a max and min number to be really high and really low. Okay, opposites. Because if you set the maximum to really, really low, then any number you compare it to will obviously be bigger. Okay, so for the number in my set, for the number value in that particular set of 6 numbers, we're iterating through and we're checking if the number is greater than the max value, which 0 is obviously true for, right? Because 0 is the first element in the set. Or it could be 3, it could be 52, it could be anything, because we're going through an unordered list. I've taken 0 as an example value. It wouldn't necessarily start at 0. It could start at minus 10, for example. But either way, all the numbers are greater than negative 10,000, so that's the same max. And it loops through again and again and again. It keeps on comparing each value to see which is the highest. And then prints the maximum and the minimum. So given 2 sets, print all common elements in these sets. And we talked about set methods briefly, though I didn't really go for all these set methods because there are a lot. You can use many. You don't necessarily use all of them. The most copied ones, and most common ones that I find to be used in code in general are add, clear, copy, and discard. Intersection sometimes too, but everything else, for example, intersection, update, and all, they are used, but much more rarely. So, going back to the example, so in this case, what we try and do is we're putting the common elements in these sets using the intersection method. And you can also try expanding it to 3 sets. And that is the key part here, because what you keep in mind is that these intersections can be found, and many data comparisons can be made in sets, but it is more rare to use a set in the first place because of the fact that it's unordered. We only really use them if we specifically are told that we don't want order. Else, we really usually use lists. Sets are more of a rare data type that aren't generally used. Okay, so that's all from me. I hope you have a good day, and stick around for our next video in the video series. Thank you.